Welcome back to the Male Playbook, fellas. Today we're going to tackle something pretty damn fundamental.
Oh, yeah.
Greed and fear.
Mm.
Those primal forces that can sometimes, you know, make us act a little cavemanish.
It's true, man. We like to think we're running the show up here.
Right.
But under the surface, these two instincts are pulling the strings way more than we realize.
Exactly. Ever feel like you're being played?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's some unseen hand kind of pushing you towards certain choices.
For sure.
Especially when it comes to, say, women or chasing success.
Because it's like we're all in this giant game.
Right.
And most guys don't even know the rules. But
Right.
once you see the game, you can start playing it smart.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's
Yeah.
start with fear. It's like our factory setting, right?
Yeah.
Default mode.
Fear is all about avoiding pain. It's hardwired into our lizard brains, that ancient part of us that's just focused on survival.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, that instinct is still running the show today.
So like fear of losing your job,
Yeah.
fear of not having enough cash, fear of not being able to provide.
Right.
It all boils down to that caveman fear of like, uh-oh, this is dangerous.
Exactly. And that's why it's so easily exploited.
Hmm.
Think about public speaking. The fear of being judged, ostracized.
Right.
That triggers the danger alarm bells in our primitive brains. Marketers use it all the time, too.
Oh, yeah.
Limited time offers. Creating a sense of urgency. It's all about tapping into that fear response.
It's like they're pushing our buttons without us even knowing it, man. Even parents use fear to control their kids.
Oh,
Oh, don't touch that stove, you'll burn yourself.
yeah. Fear is a powerful motivator. But here's the thing.
Okay.
How often are you letting fear call the shots in your own life?
Ooh.
Staying in a dead-end job, a relationship that's sucking the life out of you.
Right.
Are you making your own choices, or is fear at the wheel?
Damn, that hits home.
Yeah.
And for us guys, it's even trickier, right? We're supposed to be the tough guys, suppress our emotions, all that. But that doesn't mean we're immune to fear. In fact, maybe we're more vulnerable to it because we're not supposed to admit it's even there.
It's like trying to play the game with a blindfold on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we end up in the friend zone or getting played by women who know exactly how to push our buttons.
That nice guy syndrome is a perfect example. He thinks showering a woman with gifts and attention is the key.
Right.
But really, he's just feeding her desire for pleasure, not building any real connection. He's reacting to his own fear of rejection instead of leading with confidence.
Okay. So fear's a tricky one. But what about the other side of the coin? Pleasure. It's like a siren song, right? Drawing us in, promising good times.
Pleasure is our reward system.
Yeah.
It's how we're motivated to do pretty much everything. Eat, have sex, hit those goals, you name it. It's all about seeking out those good feelings.
And let's be real, fellas. A big chunk of that pleasure for us comes from women, right?
Ah.
The attraction, the chase,
Of course,
Yeah.
it's natural. But here's the catch. That drive for pleasure can be just as easily manipulated as fear.
you don't say,
Think about addictions, alcohol, drugs, gambling, even porn. The immediate pleasure overrides any long-term consequences. It's the same with a lot of the dating advice out there. Guys are told to chase validation, shower women with attention. It's like becoming a slave to their desires.
and then that's how we get played, right?
It's a trap, man.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting. Because true happiness, true freedom, it doesn't come from chasing external validation or constantly seeking the next hit of pleasure. It comes from within. It comes from building a life that is genuinely fulfilling on your own terms.
Well, hold up. That sounds a little too eat, pray, love for me. I mean, I'm all for self-improvement, but...
No, you got it wrong. This isn't about giving up all the good stuff.
Okay.
It's about understanding that lasting happiness, the kind that isn't dependent on external factors, comes from knowing who you are, what you want, and building a life that aligns with that.
Okay.
It's about owning your shit.
Okay. I can dig that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we master these primal forces instead of letting them master us?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And that's exactly what we're going to dive into in the next part of this episode. So we've established that, fear and pleasure are these powerful forces
Right.
that can really mess with a guy's head if he's not careful.
Yeah. Kind of like those sirens in the Odyssey, luring sailors to their doom with their sweet songs.
Exactly. It's not about erasing those instincts. That's impossible.
Right.
It's about understanding how they work.
Right.
And using that knowledge to your advantage.
Okay, so like judo. Using their force against them.
Exactly. Most guys are running around reacting to these forces without even realizing it. They're chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, and wondering why they always seem to end up in the same dead ends.
Yeah, the definition of insanity and all that.
Right. But once you understand that these forces are at play, you can start to anticipate them to see the patterns in your own behavior and the behavior of others.
Okay, so give us an example.
Yeah.
How does this work in the real world, say, with women?
Let's go back to your nice guy scenario. He's trying to win a woman over by being agreeable, showering her with gifts, basically doing whatever she wants. He thinks he's being strategic, but he's actually just feeding her desire for pleasure, reinforcing the idea that she should be the center of attention.
And what's wrong with that? Don't women want to feel special?
Of course, but there's a difference between making a woman feel special and becoming her doormat. The nice guy is operating from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being alone. He's trying to buy her affection instead of earning it.
So what's the alternative? How do you earn it?
By being a man who's comfortable in his own skin, a man who's not afraid to be assertive, a man who has his own life and interests, a man who doesn't need a woman to complete him, but wants her to share in his life.
Okay, so confidence is key. But what about those of us who aren't naturally overflowing with confidence? Can you fake it till you make it?
To a certain extent, yes, but it's more about understanding what true confidence is. It's not about arrogance or bravado. It's about knowing your worth and not being afraid to express it.
So it's an inside job. You got to believe it before you can project it.
Exactly. And that comes from self-awareness, from understanding your strengths and weaknesses, your values and beliefs. It's about being authentic, not trying to be someone you're not.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. Women are masters at manipulating our desires.
Yeah.
How do we avoid falling into those traps?
Again, it comes back to awareness.
Yeah.
Recognize that those manipulations are often playing on your fear of loss, your desire for validation. Once you see the game, it's much harder to get played.
So what are some common traps we should be looking out for?
Oh, there are so many. The damsel in distress routine, where she plays on your protective instincts. The jealousy ploy, where she tries to make you feel insecure and chase her harder. And of course, the classic sex as a weapon tactic.
Ooh, yeah, that last one is a killer. Suddenly you're walking on eggshells just hoping for a crumb of affection.
Right, and that's exactly what she wants. She's using your desire against you.
So how do we counter that? Do we just become cold and aloof?
No, not at all. It's about being aware of your own needs and boundaries. If she's using sex as a weapon, you have to be willing to walk away.
Easier said than done, man.
It is, but it's necessary, because when you start
Yeah.
sacrificing your own needs to please someone else, you're setting yourself up for resentment and unhappiness. And trust me, that's not a recipe for a healthy relationship.
Damn, so much to think about. So we've talked about fear and pleasure, but how do these forces play out in other areas of a man's life, like his career?
Well, think about it. Fear can keep you stuck in a dead-end job, afraid to take risks, afraid to go after what you really want. Pleasure can lead you down the path of instant gratification, chasing short-term rewards instead of long-term goals.
Yeah, I know a few guys like that. They're all about the quick buck, the easy score, but they never seem to build anything lasting.
Exactly. And that's because they're not playing the long game. They're letting their primal urges dictate their choices instead of using their minds to create a plan and execute it.
So it's like anything else. Success requires discipline, focus, and a willingness to delay gratification.
Yeah.
No shortcuts.
Right. And it requires understanding that setbacks are inevitable. You're going to face challenges, you're going to feel fear, you're going to be tempted by distractions. The key is to not let those things derail you.
It's about being resilient, bouncing back from adversity.
Exactly. And that's a skill that can be developed just like any other.
So it sounds like mastering these forces, both fear and pleasure, is really about mastering yourself.
That's the key takeaway. Absolutely.
All right, fellas, this is some heavy stuff. We need a minute to process all this. We'll be right back with more on how to put these principles into action in your own life. All right, guys, we're back. So we've talked about fear and pleasure, how they can really mess with our heads
Right.
and keep us from, reaching our full potential.
It's like we're all driving these high-powered sports cars.
Yeah.
But most of us are stuck in first gear, afraid to really hit the gas.
Yeah, and some of us are just spinning our wheels, burning rubber, but going nowhere fast.
Exactly. So how do we shift gears? How do we, take control and become the masters of our own destiny?
That's the million-dollar question. Give us the cheat codes, man.
All right.
Yeah.
No cheat codes, but here's the game plan. First, awareness. You got to know your enemy before you can defeat him, right?
Right.
Start paying attention to your own reactions. When you feel that fear creeping in, that anxiety tightening its grip, ask yourself, what's the root of this? What am I really afraid of?
And same goes for pleasure, right?
Yeah.
Don't just chase that dopamine hit.
Right.
Figure out what's really driving that desire.
Yeah.
Is it something that will truly fulfill you? Or is it just a quick fix, a distraction from what you really want?
Exactly. Once you've got that awareness, you can start to challenge those automatic responses.
Okay.
Is this fear rational? Is this desire serving me? Or is it leading me down a path of self-destruction?
So it's like having a conversation with yourself, being
Yeah.
your own therapist. A little introspection goes a long way.
Right. And once you've identified the problem, you can start to develop strategies to overcome it. For fear, that might involve exposure therapy. Gradually facing your fears in a controlled environment. Think of it like training for a marathon. You don't just jump in and run 26 miles on day one. You start small, build up your endurance, push your limits little by little.
Makes sense. So for a guy who's terrified of approaching women, what's his training regimen look like?
Start small, making eye contact,
Mm.
smiling, saying hello, then work your way up to starting conversations, asking for directions, maybe offering a compliment. The key is to desensitize yourself to the fear, to realize that it's not this big, scary monster you have to run from.
Right. And what about a guy struggling with, say, a porn addiction? How does he find healthier outlets for that desire?
First step is acknowledging the problem.
Right.
Then it's about finding ways to channel that energy into something more constructive. Exercise hobbies, creative pursuits, building genuine connections with real people. Therapy can be a huge help too. It's not about suppressing your desires, it's about redirecting them, finding healthier ways to fulfill them.
So it's about taking control of the narrative, rewriting the script.
Exactly. And that's where discipline comes in. You have to be willing to delay gratification, to choose long-term fulfillment over the quick hit of pleasure. It's about playing the long game, building a life that you're proud of.
Easier said than done. But that's where the real magic happens, right?
Yeah.
When you push past your comfort zone, when you challenge those primal instincts and become the man you're meant to be.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, fellas, we've covered a lot of ground today. But here's the takeaway. Fear and greed, they're part of what makes us human. But they don't have to control us. We have the power to choose our path, to write our own story.
Absolutely. Don't let those primal instincts run the show. Step into your power, gentlemen.
Damn straight. And that's a wrap on this episode of The Male Playbook. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep those minds sharp and those instincts in check. We'll catch you on the flip side.